Welcome. It's Saturday, not Sunday. And it's a learning module week and things have been crazy. And so Lauren asked yesterday, right? What's the learning
That's
module? So, oh God, we got a new learning module. And so I think we came up with something really amazing. Lauren's going to lead a presentation after demos on the importance of, I guess, communication, documentation, like writing good messages to help yourself and help your team. So we're going to cover like good PR and commit messages, good documentation, good other things, lots of things, all the things you need to write and communicate, why they should be good and why it's helpful. And hopefully you'll have some takeaways from that you can start applying like right away at Collab Lab and on your other side projects and when you get a job. So, okay, we'll start with demos. I think Ashling's group's going first. So if you want to go ahead and kick us off and show us what you worked on this week.
Diane, do you mind sharing your screen? Because I'm in remote desktop and my video doesn't work.
Yeah, no problem.
I can kind of talk us through. Sorry, I'll just pull up the I think that, like, for me this week, it was like nice to, I think in both of the teams, it was nice to see things that we had done before and kind of reusing them and stuff like that. So that was really, anything that you can reuse is like a good idea, basically. If you don't have to relearn loads of stuff. So I'll just find our.
That's great. That is a really exciting time where you kind of start feeling more comfortable because you're like, I know this code. I wrote this code. I can work with this.
Yeah, exactly. So ours was estimating the next purchase date to be computed at the time my purchase is recorded in the database. And so we were also given a little help with estimates.js file that was compiled for us, so that was quite helpful. Do you want to demo it, Diane, and we can talk through?
Sure. So here we have a couple of items that are under the token age-heady CCCC. So let me just add a fresh new item. Null integer with date. Okay, so we've got a table here which has a null last purchase. So when we click on it, there should be an updated last purchase date to today, and the number of purchases gets created. When you uncheck it, the last estimate, there's new fields that are added and to the database. So last estimate, latest interval, and next purchase date get added, and those will explain a bit later in the code. And I mean, yep, that's it for the demo part, I think.
Yep. Yeah, you could probably show us the
code. Do you guys see my code?
Yep, we can see it.
Yeah, okay.
So in the shopping list, we mostly modified the handle check.
Handle check, wasn't it? Yeah.
Did you want to talk about it, Ashling, or do you want me to go through it?
Yeah. I think like I just kind of found, I had a look at the previous groups just because the estimates was helpful, but it was like still quite confusing to us. Sometimes when all of the terms are quite similar, it can be like quite like modeled. So we kind of looked at how their approach was, and then just like, yeah, so that's the estimates, which was very helpful, but there's like a lot of similar terms like purchase date, last purchase date, all that kind of stuff. So that kind of sometimes was confusing for us. But if you want to go back to the shopping list, we can talk about the handle check a little bit more. So yeah, again, if else, like, is like, for me, it just makes so much sense. So that was a nice part of this. So for example, if the item last purchase date equals null, doesn't equal null, sorry, up the top there, we're getting the estimate. Some kind of roadblocks for us, which was very helpful to meet Lauren and Joey yesterday, was we had parse inst, I think. Can you find where that was originally? It was last purchase date, was it? Remember where that was, Dan? I think it was somewhere around there.
It was the last purchase date. Or the...
Yeah, that was giving us last purchase, wasn't it? Yeah, it's the thing, it's just so confusing. So yeah, parse int had been very successful for us before in our other task with myself and Diane, but this time it wasn't. It was giving us quite a weird number. So that was one thing that we figured out yesterday with the support of the mentors. But was a thing. Firestore was another thing. We kind of found it took us a while to get stuff to the database, and then when we did, it was like quite clear to see. We also use console log a lot, but we didn't want to overclog it with too many things. What do you think, Dan? Is there anything else to say on what we've created?
No, I mean, I guess the only thing that we changed in the handle check is that we passed it the item directly to our handle check, which we weren't doing previously. We were just passing the event. So we added a conditional depending if the item had a last purchase date, and then updated the fields accordingly. But that's about it.
Yeah, and moment as well is another thing. A kind of we had to apply at various stages, and that was new to us. It was a really good learning curve, definitely.
That's awesome. This story in particular is a really challenging one. It's like, even for me when I was doing the project, like to follow the logic of it all and just even figure out like, what is the app even supposed to be doing? Was like hard.
Exactly, yeah.
Cool, okay. Any other questions on that one from anybody? Thoughts, comments, questions, concerns?
I just had one. I think, Lauren, you had a comment on the end of ours about taking number of purchases and making it into a variable. I just didn't really know how to do that. I tried to look at it last night, but I couldn't. I don't know if you could speak to that.
Oh, sure. Can you pull up the code again, Diane? Can you hear me? I never use my headphones, so I'm not.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. So in the save where you're actually like in line, I see, in line 99.
99?
Yep.
Yeah.
So num of purchases, and then you're checking right there if the item is checked equals false, then this, otherwise that. We're using that piece of logic 2 times. You're using it on line 99 and you're using it again on line 116. So if you just, at the very top of your handle check, like outside of the if statement even,
okay.
You know, I'm sorry, inside the handle check, but on line like 78. Yep. If you did like const, give it a name, and then pass in that logic, then you can just use that variable 2 times rather than.
Why is it outside of the if statement? Because that's what I was putting it inside the if statement. Yes.
Yeah. So if you put it inside of the if statement, then JavaScript won't apply to it. Once you get down to the else, it has to do with scoping of the variable. So if it's outside of the if statement, JavaScript will know what that variable is in both places.
Yeah, of course. Okay. I can see it with fresher eyes today at 10 o'clock last night. I was wasn't the same feeling.
And after working on all of those dates, which was so like, it was very hard. Super hard one.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay. On to the next group. Let's see what you built.
Cool.
Okay,
All right, Jennifer, how do we want to do this?
I can share my screen and demo it, and then do you
Okay.
want to go over the code?
Sure.
Okay.
Jennifer, you have so many laptops.
I'm
Tell me about it.
kind of jealous.
That's the one my daughter plays with. That's my really ancient college laptop. She checks her emails every morning. That's what she does.
Horrible.
Let's see. Share screen. Okay. So I've joined one of our lists that we already have in our database here. Everyone can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. And then you can see like we have quite a few things. We have masks, laptop, cheese with a smiley face. So our issue was to create a search kind of filter so that you can easily see, did I already put that in my list? And so we have just a clear button here as well. So that did I put in apples, then if you put in A, it should filter everything with an A inside. And then we'll continue, and you can see A, peas, and laptop, grape juice, apple, and we keep going to apple, and we've gone down to apple pie. And if I put apple space, it only does apple pie. And so if you click the clear button, it'll clear, and then the list comes back up.
This is perfect. Great work. I love it.
Thanks. So now, do you want me to open the code, or do you?
Yeah, let's see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
I just love how flawlessly that's functioning. That's really great.
Yeah. So basically, John carried the team this week. It was really awesome. He stayed up until midnight one night and basically got most of it working.
Couldn't sleep.
So there were a couple of things that he added into the code, and then just you can chime in whenever you want, John. Did you want to go over the code?
No, go for it. You're doing good.
Okay. So basically, we added in a couple things. We added in this filter string state that gets tied to the actual input. And we also took out the code that was reused a lot, which was this kind of like, this is like the input item for the actual list. And so that since it was being used, I think like 3 or 4 times in the code, we decided to take it out and just put it into a helper function. So then if you scroll down, most of our logic happens in the return statement, just because most of it, we have a ternary operator to actually conditionally render either this constant filtered list that is being updated as you type in to the input. And so we'll take this filtered list, filtered by the actual filter string that we've set to state. And so that is tied to our input. And then so we'll check to see if anything is in filter string, if it's truthy, if there's actually anything more than just an empty string, then we will do our conditionally rendered logic, which is here. But then if there's nothing in filter string, then we'll go ahead and just map through the whole list that's already in the other full collection state. And then that's basically how it works. And then the clear button, all that does is we have a button here on click. You just set the filter string using state just back to an empty string. And so it like forces the ternary operator to just render everything. Yep, that's basically it.
Excellent work.
Nailed it.
Good job.
Nice.
Woo. Any thoughts on that one from anybody? Questions? Looks good. It looks great.
Yeah. Shout out to the team doing that. We had a sync on Thursday, and it was pretty much done, and we were just wrapping up some loose ends on it. So great hustle, everybody. That was awesome.
Good job. I love to see it. Cool. Well, if there's nothing else then on demos, I'll turn it over to Lauren for this fantastic presentation on writing good things.
Yay.
Okay.
So Stacy started the story on this week's learning module. So let me just fill it out a little bit. So last night, Joey and I and Diane and Ashling were kind of slogging through the last bits of the logic and the wrestling with dates for their issue, which was really challenging. I think I'm sharing the wrong screen. Am I sharing Slack right now?
Nope.
So we can see the slide.
Beautiful. Let me present. And then I popped over to our mentor channel. I said, hey, what are we planning on for our learning module this week? And we started brainstorming earlier in the week. Andrew and Stacy and then a few of us mentors had met, kind of talking about Collab Lab and brainstorming on some future directions and starting some new initiatives. And one of the things that came out of that was creating a pull request template to help teams communicate a little bit better about what their pull request is all about, and to give other teams a little more context and what they're doing for their PRs. And so out of that grew this learning module on communication, its importance in really all jobs, but as developers. And I would say all of this applies like triply to teams that are working remotely, teams that are distributed, this kind of communication. And in particular, we're talking about written communication today, but how to communicate effectively across the miles and within teams, and how to foster that open communication that really levels everybody up on your team. So communication, what, why, and how. So communication as a developer is one of the key skills that you can have. And I can tell you, as a former opera singer, right, that was my job before I was a developer. I will tell you that my communication skills are what landed me positions as a developer. It wasn't my fantastic coding ability. Communication is key. So first, we're going to talk about three different things. We're going to talk about documentation and what that looks like as a developer. We're going to talk about, what's our second one? PR, pull requests, and what that kind of documentation can look like, and code comments. And then we're going to open it up to everybody and talk about our experience. So documentation. Documentation helps us remember, like, oh, what did I do again? Why did I do it that way? It's a great tool in a team for revisiting big decisions that the team has made. Like, oh, we decided to use such and such library a year ago, and I know that we had some good reasons why we did that, but we didn't write it down. So why did we do that again? It's very useful for written documentation, is super useful for onboarding new team members. It helps them get up to speed more quickly, and helps empower them to get up to speed on their own without having to rely on other people's institutional knowledge. I don't know who else has experienced, but I experienced this, but I imagine many of us have, that you join a team of any kind, and there's that one person that has lived, worked at this place for a super long time, and they know everything. And you have to go to them all of the time to find out how to do your job. But if this information was written down in an easily accessible place, you could find that out on your own, and then you would also have that institutional knowledge. It spreads that knowledge across your whole team. I find, for me, writing things down helps me retain information better. And then again, written documentation empowers all team members to have the knowledge to be able to do their jobs really well. Oh gosh. Okay, how? What does this look like? So I want to say that I started like the shell of these slides, and then Stacy came in and made them amazing. So thank you, Stacy. They look beautiful. And these are her tips, and I love them so much. So write for the person who knows the least. Give lots of information. I'm always telling my 14-year-old this, like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know anything about this video game. Please, I need some background knowledge on this video game. Thank you. Right, so write for that person. Assume that the people that you're writing for don't really have the background that you do, because you've been studying and researching this thing. And then, this is so great, optimize for the person who needs a quick reference. And this pertains to like formatting of your document. Have clear headings. You can have a table of contents. So somebody who has this background knowledge, but maybe just needs to look something up really quickly, can scan through your document and find the section that they need. So as an example, let's see, get out of presentation mode. This is some documentation that I wrote for our team when we were trying to make a technical decision comparing two different JavaScript libraries that we were interested in, but we weren't sure which way to go. So based upon my research, I wrote up this document that's now published that we can refer back to in a year or even 2 years and decide, oh, why did we choose that? Oh yeah, these are the reasons. So I've divided it up into different sections. I think what could make this better is to have even a table of contents at the top so people could scan through it quickly. Trying to think what else. And then I put at the bottom some helpful links that include relevant pull requests so that that information is preserved. Stacy and Joey, have anything you want to chime in on?
Yeah, that's actually what I'm doing right now. Our company's having like a little hackathon thing right now. And I chose to forego that and learn a new service that someone maintained, but that person was let go. And so they had all the tribal knowledge of the service. And so I'm kind of doing just this, where I'm diving in as a fresh pair of eyes and I'm writing everything that I learned about it. So I'm writing up a big Confluence document right now with everything about how the system works and how it interacts with all these other services. And it's really letting me know that my documentation writing skills are not that good. And I'm glad I'm doing this right now because it's good practice.
Yeah, it's really hard. And there are a lot of people, like on my team, for example, that like really hate writing documentation. And it's because, we don't always have a lot of practice at it. You're not great at things that you don't practice. And so just the act of going through it really helps you organize your thoughts. And I think also like helps you make better decisions. And that kind of documentation that Joey's talking about is really going to be so valuable for his team going forward.
Yeah, this kind of thing too that Lauren's showing us that she wrote is likely going to be a large part of what you do on the job as a developer. Like you'll see stuff like this come out all the time on your team as people research things and decisions are made. And like it's broken down, this one in particular, really well. So there's a lot of really detailed information, but you want people to want to read what you're writing. That means that you need to make it like engaging and easy to digest and easy to follow so that when somebody looks at this document, they feel comfortable exploring it and they have better feelings towards whatever you're writing about simply because you wrote well. Your decisions and your input will be better received if you write about it well. So never underestimate the power of doing good documentation when it comes to influence.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on. Presentation mode. I didn't really have a good emoji for this one, so I just love that one.
Okay.
Pull requests. All right, so a great pull request description gives reviewers better context of your code and helps them do a better job of reviewing it. And then I would also add, like as someone who's applied for many, many jobs, a big part of interviewing is like perhaps you have some kind of code challenge to complete, and then a huge part of that is then talking through your code and walking through your code with the interviewer. So having a robust pull request description helps you remember what you did it demonstrates to that company that you can communicate well about your code, which is very, very important. And it lets them know, like, okay, I want to make this easy for you to walk through my code. Wouldn't it be great to have me on your team? Because I want to make your life easier. Anything to add to that, Stacey?
Yeah, like I love that part too. Whenever I was like moved over to the engineering team at Zapier, I had to walk through a bunch of code that I'd written too, and it had been like months since I'd written some of it and couldn't remember why I had written some of it. But because I left really good like commit messages and PR messages, I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I was supposed to be doing. It helped me get up to speed faster. And along the same lines of like demonstrating how well you can communicate, if you can write these things in a way that other people can learn from them, you become a more valuable resource or asset to a team because you're somebody who can teach as well. So super important.
Absolutely. Okay, and so what does that look like? So again, Stacey filled this out. So screenshots and GIFs and videos of your, like if it's a new UI feature, what does that look like? So you can show your reviewers right there in the PR description. That you can put links to resources and permalinks to code in GitHub or whatever version control system you're using. So permalinks to like other files that you're referencing, like maybe if you found a particular solution somewhere online that, hang on, there's a chat.
That's what I was just being saying. So like, just real quick, in GitHub, your code's changing all the time. So those files are changing all the time. So if you just link to a file or a line of code, it's going to be different in a couple of weeks when somebody's changed to it. So in GitHub, if you press Y on a page, it'll make that a permalink so that you can send a piece of code in your PR that will never change.
Oh, nice. And then, so this is really important and super helpful for reviewers. Is to do a self-review before asking others to review your code. And I don't think we've really talked about this in Collab Lab so much yet. So a self-review is, hey, I've submitted this pull request. Now I'm gonna go through and put comments as if I'm the reviewer and saying, this is why I chose to do this thing this way. Like maybe something was particularly tricky and you had to make some trade-offs. These are the trade-offs I made and this is why. Or it can be, you know, I know that this works, what I did right here, but maybe there's a better way. Could you, reviewer, think of a better way to accomplish this little piece of code here? I'd love to do this. I love to do this myself. I always do a self-review when I'm submitting a PR at work, and like my PRs turn into these like, huge conversations, but I appreciate that. And I know that it gives my reviewers context about what I did and why I chose to do what I did. So here's a really awesome, oh gosh, what is happening? There we go. Okay, so here's a great PR description that Stacey created using, okay, so this is from TCL 3. So in her PR description, she talks about like the types of changes that she made. Oh, it's a new feature and I updated dependencies. It shows what the acceptance criteria were for this particular issue right there in the PR description. And that's just, it's like, it's super, gosh, I cannot think of the word right now, but it's super helpful for your reviewers to not have to link off to the issue, right? The acceptance criteria are just right there. The related issue, this is what it closes. The description, this PR adds 2 new components, et cetera, et cetera. She wrote a very organized and helpful description about what her code is trying to accomplish. Here's how to test my code. Look at this, do this, do this, do that. Like super useful, especially if you're working on a big application and your reviewers might not know the entire application because it's huge. Like where do I go and even look to find where this code is taking effect? And then this is really nice, like, okay, I've done all of these things above, but I still, maybe we need to also revisit this and create an issue for this. So this is a great, this is great information for the person who, number one, is reviewing the code, and number two, it's going to be great for her to come back and look at it and be like, oh, what did I do? What are the decisions that I made? And give her a lot of information and context about what she did in the past.
Totally. And if you scroll down on that PR to where the commit messages are,
Oh, yeah.
if you click those three bubbles on a commit message, you'll get the like detailed description. And this is really helpful because if you're looking at a file in GitHub, you can see like when that code was written and what commit messages along with it were. So if I'm looking at Joey's code from a year ago and I'm like, what even is this? If he's left a really good detailed commit message, I can pop in there and see like why this code was implemented in the first place, like right away. And it like saves a lot of time and confusion and wheel spinning. So highly recommend leaving good detailed commit messages as well.
Yeah, and something that I've practiced doing more is to prefix my commit messages with kind of what it is, if it's a fix, if it's a feature, if it's a cleanup. So I do like, if I'm adding a new functionality, I'll do bracket, feature, bracket, and then describe what it does. That way, when people are reviewing it, if they want to go commit by commit message, they can see the process of what I did, what's actually a feature, or like what's cleanup.
Love that. And like, just to give some perspective too, like, so on the job for me, like I work on like a small team myself, but we have a huge team of developers and a lot of times we have to work together on different features. So if I ask for a review from somebody who's not on my direct team, chances are they have no idea what I'm working on, but it somehow affects what they do. Because they're really passionate about their team and what they work on, they just feel passionate. They want to know what the heck you're doing. So when you send them a PR, you want to make sure, whether it's somebody on your team or somebody else's team, that you've very clearly detailed what exactly it's doing so that they can get their bearings really fast rather than poking around in their feature that you've been, working on and being like, what is happening here? And then the self-review is really important too, because those people don't know what you know. And so, for example, last week I worked on a different team's feature, and I knew like the very next thing we were doing, like the very next ticket we were going to be tackling was affecting this one line of code. So instead of writing it one way and then trashing it next week and writing it another way, I could leave a comment there being like, I know this isn't the best solution for this like quick fix, but next week I'm going to be coming back to this and fixing it like this. And so it's like giving them that context, saved them the time of being like, why are you doing it like this? This doesn't make any sense. So it's like sharing knowledge, explaining why you did things. It also helped me because I was able to go to a line of the code in my PR and be like, I'm not sure why you all have chosen to do it this way. Can you like explain it to me? And they gave me this big, beautiful explanation of why they were doing it that way. And now I know so much more. So it's just like code reviews when you're doing them on other people's things. It's a chance to share what you know and ask questions.
Awesome. Otra vez. Wonderful. Comments in your code. Stacy, do you want to talk about this one? So writing comments in your code, of course, gives your team, again, more context while they're actively tracing through code that you implemented. And let's go to, so the kinds of comments to write are not necessarily, this code does the following thing, but focus on why the code was written rather than what it does. And so let's think off to this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, and so this example that she's going to show you is a little bit different, but still really important. Ryan Florence and his whole team write really great documentation for the like packages that they build, which is helpful because there's tons of users using their code who need to know how it works. But I love the way that they write code, and so it's a really great example. But when you're writing these messages about why certain code is in place, it's important rather than the what, because your code we should be able to read your code and know what it does, but there might be extra context necessary to know why the code is in place or how it affects other features. So that, again, if I'm going into Joey's code from a year ago, I can know like, oh, okay, if I'm going to change this, if I'm going to refactor this code, I also need to be paying attention to all of these other things that might seem very far removed because they're actually very tightly coupled. And it like, you wouldn't know that just from reading this little box of code here without traversing through the whole code base. So if it's things like that, like we had to implement this because this bug was happening over here, or even if it's like a line of CSS that seems a little like peculiar, if you can say like, this is in place because we need the, top navigation to disappear on whatever. It just
Or like,
other people
yeah.
experience it quicker.
Or this solves a Safari, this fixes an issue in Safari only. That's why this weird piece of code is here.
Exactly. So it's like, if other people are looking at your code, and like it could be in the future, or it could be like in your PR, they know exactly why you put this line of code that maybe isn't as readable or might have other like side effects, without having to like ask you or spin their wheels trying to figure it out themselves. Help your team move faster and harder by documenting your code well.
Brainstorm. Okay, so question for everyone: what have been your experiences with documentation? What I don't know, what makes you nervous about writing documentation and PR descriptions, or what have you experienced both just for yourself and on your teams? What have those experiences been like? What's been useful and what's been less useful, I guess?
Don't be shy.
All right, I'll go. For me, I will say that my experiences as documentation that's the problem. I don't. For some reason, I just don't. It's like with comments, as far as comments go, it's if you can actually see my personal projects, sometimes they're just riddled with comments, and it's like, why, or I'm gonna come back to this, or this is what this does. It doesn't. My comments really don't say why it's there. It just describes what this thing does. So I kind of like what I learned today, as far as don't just explain what it does or why it's there, or what it does, explain why it's there, as well as describe what the end result is supposed to be. But yeah, I mean that's I just need to actually start documenting and practice documenting more.
Even if you're doing the what, it's good practice, I think. Like
Yeah.
somebody on my team that just wrote this UI feature that like has like, you can cycle through text options and it types them out and then it backspaces over them. But it's a lot more complex, like using words per minute so that it's like not a smooth type, like a human like type. And so it's this huge like file. And instead of just being like, this sets the words per minute, it's like, this sets the words per minute so that it's not a smooth type and is more of a human type. And this will reset the type so that we can cycle back to pick the next text option. And this stops it on the last one so that blah, blah, blah. So it's always like, it's some of the what it does so that you can like get to it easier. But then it's also like, but why? So I think
exactly.
Like, what, you got the first step. Now
just got to expand.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think the funny thing about documentation is that everyone likes good documentation, but nobody wants to write it. I've always been on, like, whenever we had team week at Epicodus and things like that, I feel like the README was always the most neglected piece of our project, like every single time. And I really enjoy writing the README because it has its own difficulties in that you have to strike a balance between, as one of my professors used to say, writing for your grandma if she doesn't know how to code, or like writing enough technical information for it to be useful. And so I find that that's like a nice, good challenge to always do for all of like my coding projects, to just like try, even if I have to come back later to do it, just like try to write a good README and have like good instructions on someone who like doesn't even know how to use, let's say, like Node or something to like pull down your repo and like spin up your project. And so, and like you can even see that for projects like our whole cohort hated the C# ASP.NET documentation compared to Mozilla's MDN documentation. And you can just see why, like the C# one is just so highly technical and dense. It's hard to find the actual information that you're looking for. And so that's why, like, I always try to remind myself, even though it does feel like a chore, you should do it, because when it's bad, everyone notices. But when it's good, no one notices because everything goes flawlessly and you can look up the information that you want.
Nice.
And that C# documentation hits home. Our services are in C# and I can't, that's the one language where it's like, this is like, yeah, I feel it.
Yeah.
Or you wanted to cry when you said C#.
Yeah, it hit close to home.
Anyone else have thoughts on it? I personally am always scared to write comments in my code because I feel like it's going to make me look like an idiot somehow. Like somebody's going to be like, this is obvious. Why would you write this? But literally no one has ever said that to me ever about any comments I put in code. So all fears I put on myself.
Yeah, and just a quick question for the mentors. I don't know, do different companies kind of like treat kind of this whole process differently? Just because, like, you know, I know some places where it's like, oh, you can only comment the code if you like do this or if it's really necessary. Because I had some like software engineering friends, and like they've had experiences where like their senior dev just deleted all the comments out of their code because it was like they were like, oh, this is unnecessary or something like that.
Culture.
Yeah. People in my team have different views on comments, and so it kind of depends on who's reviewing your pull request. Some people think that your code should be self-documenting, so it shouldn't need comments. Others think comments here and there are fine. So, I mean, it really depends, you know, what your team structure is and kind of who's reviewing your pull request.
And don't underestimate the power of your voice in this situation too. As somebody coming in who's new, it's really important to raise those kinds of thoughts and concerns, being like, look, there will be other new people like me coming onto the team, and this can help get them up to speed faster on our code base. So if you get pushback, you know, it's okay to push back a little bit too.
Is this something that you all would ask like in an interview? Like how this process works at the company?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I've been asked that too, as the interviewee. Like, what are your opinions about commenting your code? I've worked on a team that's like strictly forbidden. Only in the most extreme circumstances can you put comments in your code, which is hard. That's a hard team situation to be on. But like, you're right, Jen, there are different teams have different cultures in terms of what they like in terms of commenting code. But I've been asked that before, for sure, in an interview. What are your thoughts on commenting code?
Anyone else want to share? If not, we will jump into next week's issues.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, I was gonna say, since you're already sharing, but I'll just grab this. I can screen share, no big deal. Let's see, screen share. Okay, so I dropped in Slack the pairs for the week. It looks like Jennifer and Diane and Aisling and John for week 6 already. Okay. So it looks like we have issue 11 and 12. 11 is, as a user, I want to delete items from my shopping list in cases where I made an error entering the item or where I know I'll no longer be buying the item in the future. And then issue number 12, so deleting items. Issue number 12, as a user, I want to view a list of my shopping list items in order of how soon I'm likely to need to buy each of them again. So playing off the logic that was built last week with the purchase date calculations. Any takers for either of those things? If not, I'll just assign them in order.
Yeah, so for reference, number 11 has to deal with database stuff, and number 12 is more UI focused work. just in case anybody wanted to focus on one or the other.
I would prefer 11, John, if you don't mind. Just to see
Alright.
what that's like.
Yeah, sure, that works.
That's okay.
Okay, I'll drop these in your Slack threads if you all want to assign them to yourselves. Lauren or Joey, any preferences on where you want to go? All right, Joey's on the top of my screen, so I'll just put him with 11 with Aisling and John. Let me figure out how to do this again. Breakout room. Okay, let me stop screen sharing. Everything gets weird when you're screen sharing. There we go, breakout rooms. Manually assign Lauren, John, Joey, and then, oh no, wait, no. Aisling, gosh, wow. I'm no good at this. Aisling.
Hard to talk and do things at the same time, honestly.
Yeah.
Now I cannot figure out how to add somebody to this one. Breakout room. Bear with me here.
You're
2.
good.
I got it. Okay. I'm going to open up these breakout rooms. Really, really great work this week. I hope you're all doing well. Keep up the communication on Slack. It's been great. And take care of yourselves because it's still a very hard time and we recognize that. You all are the best. All right. See you around. Opening room.
Adios.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.